Today on my bench lies a beautiful Howard pocket watch movement, size 10, 21 jewels. I bought it on eBay to give it a new purpose. From now on, it will work on someone's wrist, because I'm going to fit it into a brand new wristwatch case. I'm looking at these beautiful iridescent hands. It's not often that hands are preserved in such good condition. The dial also looks excellent. There are no major damages. I turn the movement over. I wanted to test it on the time grapher, but it is so dirty that I'm not going to do that. I don't want the dirt to work its way into the gears. In the close-up, you can see small fibers from clothing or something similar. There is a lot of it. This movement definitely needs a proper cleaning. It's time to start by removing the hands and the dial. It will be safer if I remove the balance first. Now I can remove the dial. In this movement, the dial does not have feet. Instead, it has an external ring pressed onto the main plate. An interesting idea. This way, the dial feet cannot be broken off. During removal, I have to be careful. You can see it clearly in the close-up. I am pressing the ring downward, not inward. Oh, it worked. It popped off the plate. I moved to the dial side to remove the hour wheel and the cannon pinion. I can see that the dial washer is missing. Fortunately, I have plenty of spare ones in different sizes. Another new thing for me is the way the cap jewels are held in place. There are no screws. They are friction fitted. I can also see ruby banking pins. They are beautiful. It's a shame they cannot be seen from the outside. I move over to the train side of the movement. It's time to start removing the bridges. First, I will let down the mainspring. The first bridge has been removed. I'm inspecting the jewels. Everything looks fine. I will need to remove the cap jewels set in this beautiful gold setting. Now it is easier to see how much fiber and dirt has collected here. It's time to remove the mainspring barrel bridge. I'm looking carefully at the gears to remember how they are installed. Now I will remove the click. The click spring is permanently attached to the plate, and that is a very good thing. It will never get lost. Now I'm removing the center wheel on which the cannon pinion is fitted. Next to be removed is the fourth wheel, and then the remaining wheels. The movement looks as if a spider had been living inside it. It's time to remove the pallet bridge and the pallet fork. This screw is not original. I will screw it back into the plate so I don't mix it up later. Now I'm removing the mainspring barrel. The new mainspring has already been ordered from my favorite supplier, Dave Coatsworth. He has his own online store, which I can honestly recommend. www.daveswatchparts.com. Now it's time to dismantle the winding and setting system, also known as the keyless works. The setting lever spring will be removed first. An interesting solution. It has its own fixed spacer washer. I will screw the screw back into the plate together with the washer. This is the setting lever. Now I will remove the yoke spring and the yoke. I have to be careful so it doesn't fly off into space. Done. That actually went quite smoothly. The only thing left is to remove the cover for the wheels of the keyless works. I will screw this screw back in, so later I won't have to guess where it came from. Now I can remove the remaining wheels: the minute wheel, the intermediate wheel, and the winding wheel. Now I can remove the winding stem and the remaining gears. To make that possible, I need to unscrew the retaining screw and then gently lift the main plate at the very edge. Only now is there enough space to remove the gears. Another interesting solution, and one I am seeing for the first time. Now it's time for the cap jewels of the balance and the pallet fork. One of them shot off into space, but I found it. Now I understand how to do this safely. All it takes is to gently push it out from the other side. The disassembly is complete. Now it's time for a preliminary cleaning in isopropyl alcohol. I can remove the mainspring now. I'm always very careful here because this can easily turn into a disaster. Many times I have had to search for a spring or a barrel after it shot up into the air. Oh, exactly like here. One moment of distraction, and trouble is guaranteed. All right, the situation is under control. And that concludes the preparation stage before cleaning. Now it is time to put my trusty Elma to work. I will skip this part of the video because it is a rather dull and repetitive procedure. After cleaning all the parts, I can begin the reassembly. I will start with the mainspring. In my workshop, unlike in many other YouTube videos, this part is usually much more difficult. The problem is that the outer hook of the mainspring has to engage in the correct place on the wall of the barrel, and that is not always easy. Sometimes the spring slips out of the hook, and the whole procedure has to be repeated from the beginning. A small drop of oil on the bottom surface of the barrel. Now I can press the mainspring into place. With this particular movement, installing the mainspring appears to be quite simple. There is no T-end attachment, so I do not have to worry about the end of the spring jumping out of its slot. Here, I simply have to press the mainspring into the barrel. Done. The mainspring is in place. A small amount of oil on the coils where metal rubs against metal. After installing the barrel arbor, I apply a little grease to reduce metal-to-metal friction. Now I can press the upper barrel cover into place. Next, I lubricate the cap jewels of the balance and the escapement. This is one of my favorite jobs. I would never replace this method with an automatic oiler. Both jewels are now lubricated, so I can install them. I gently rotate the first one back to its original position and press it into its setting. Done. Now the second jewel. Done. Before assembling the keyless works, I apply a small amount of grease to the metal-to-metal contact points. The sliding clutch goes into place, followed by the winding pinion and the winding stem. I close the service opening and secure it with a screw. Once again, I apply a little grease to the metal-to-metal contact surfaces and then install the wheels involved in winding the movement. First, the winding pinion, then the intermediate pinion, and finally the minute wheel. I secure everything with the cover plate. A small amount of grease, and now I can install the yoke and the yoke spring. The spring has a cutout for its retaining screw. It has to be carefully guided into its dedicated groove and secured with the screw. Once it is locked in place like this, it will never go flying across the workshop. A small victory for every watchmaker. A quick check to make sure everything works together correctly. It does. The next step is to install the setting lever and the setting lever spring. Now I move to the watchmaker's side of the movement to install the next components. A small amount of grease on the metal-to-metal contact points. Now I install the crown wheel, followed by the ratchet wheel. It is time to fit the barrel bridge. I have to admit that this movement is not particularly difficult to assemble. The engineers clearly designed it so that the production line would suffer as few delays as possible. Now it is time to install the train bridge. There are several pivots that have to enter their jewel holes under a single bridge, so this will require a little more patience. Once all the pivots are correctly seated, I can tighten the screws. There is still one cap jewel left to lubricate. This one belongs to the escape wheel. I place a tiny drop of Mobius 9010 oil in the center. I am checking whether the amount of oil is sufficient. If it is, the small central oil spot in the middle of the jewel should move when it comes into contact with the pivot. Unfortunately, it is not moving. That means there is too little oil, and the pivot will not be properly lubricated while the movement is running. I have to correct it. The jewel must be removed, cleaned, and lubricated again. Now it looks right. You can clearly see the oil spot pulsing as it touches the escape wheel pivot. I can now install the pallet fork. Everything engages beautifully. A light touch on the center wheel sets the pallet fork oscillating. Now I can begin the final stage of assembly, installing the balance. First, I have to lubricate the cap jewel in the balance cock and secure the jewel to the cock together with the micro regulator. Next, I place the balance wheel into the movement. Then I install the balance cock and finally attach the balance stud to the balance cock. For me, this is the safest method. The balance stud is in place. Or at least, that is what I thought. Unfortunately, as I discovered later, it was not seated correctly. The worst part is still ahead of me, but I will not get ahead of the story. The next step is to lubricate the arbor on which the cannon pinion will be installed. A small drop of oil where the arbor contacts the jewel. I carefully press the cannon pinion into place, making sure not to break a tooth. Done. The gears mesh beautifully. Now it is time to lubricate the remaining jewels. The motion work jewels are lubricated. The most difficult task comes next, lubricating the pallet stones. A tiny amount of oil on the pallet stone, then 5 teeth of the escape wheel, followed by another small drop of oil. This sequence is repeated 3 times in total. Precision is essential. This is not a job for someone with unsteady hands. The lubrication is complete. I installed the balance so that I could begin the initial regulation. That was when my problems started. The reading on the time grapher was unsatisfactory. Instead of a straight line, I was seeing a strange, wavy trace. That encouraged me to continue making adjustments, and eventually, I bent the balance staff. Yes, unfortunately, I bent it. Only very slightly, but enough to cause a problem. The balance began to slow down whenever the balance cock was fully tightened. If I loosened the screw by a quarter turn, the balance recovered its energy. But when I tightened the screw completely, it slowed down again. Unfortunately, I had to stop the work at this point. I ordered a new balance staff, and now I am waiting for it to arrive. It will take about 2 weeks before the package reaches me. The package containing the new balance staff arrived, just as I expected. I skipped the actual process of replacing the balance staff, as I thought it would be rather uninteresting to watch. So, let's begin with a look at the movement's performance after the balance staff replacement. I think the results are actually quite good. Although the movement loses quite a lot of time in the crown side position, I'm still satisfied with the result. After all, this movement is around 100 years old. What more could we realistically expect? Now it's time to put the movement into its new case. I bought this case on eBay. This is what it looks like. To make the movement fit properly, I had to slightly enlarge the inside of the case. That's quite common. A new case often requires some minor adjustment of its internal dimensions. It's not a problem if you have a lathe in your workshop, but in this case, a watchmaker's lathe is not really enough. You need something a little more powerful. Now I can start installing the remaining components on the dial side. a tiny amount of lubricant on the metal-to-metal contact surfaces. Next comes the hour wheel. I also need to add the missing dial washer. It wasn't there when I bought this movement, but fortunately, I have plenty of them in various sizes. Now it's time to install the dial. These marks visible on the underside are traces left from working on the tiny feet of the applied numerals. And look at this! What do we have here? It says, solid silver. Now I understand why, even after 100 years, this dial is still in such remarkably good condition. The dial is now in place. I just need to press it down a little more so that it sits perfectly against the movement. And please forgive me for forgetting about my manicure. You know how it is. A retired man has other problems to worry about. Something is always aching somewhere. So sometimes I simply forget to take care of my nails. Anyway, it looks like the dial is now seated correctly. Time to install the movement in the case. The winding stem is fitted. Now I'll tighten the screws that secure the movement inside the case. The movement is secured. Next, it's time to install the hands. The hour hand is in place. Now the minute hand. And finally, the seconds hand. I can see that the seconds hand is not original, but I'm not going to complain. The hands are absolutely beautiful. Now, a quick test to make sure the hands pass each other safely. Everything looks good. Now it's time to place the lubricated gasket into the upper case cover. The gasket is in position. I can now install the case covers. It's a little embarrassing to admit this, but there's no point hiding it. After all, I'm retired, so I can't exactly afford a proper professional case press. What I have is probably the cheapest manual case press you can buy, so that's what I'm going to use. The first cover is pressed into place. With both covers installed, I can finally fit the strap. I have a beautiful gray strap that matches the silver dial perfectly. There will now be quite a lot of fiddling around with fitting the lugs and attaching the strap, so I'm going to skip that part. And now it's time to show you the final result of my work. Disassembly, cleaning, reassembly, and regulation took me a considerable amount of time, but it was absolutely worth spending that time working on such a beautiful example of American watchmaking and engineering. I love all the decorative finishing, the gold jewel settings, and the many other wonderful details that I won't go into again here. In any case, watches like this simply aren't made anymore, and that is exactly why I'm so pleased that I was able to give this movement a new chapter in its life. After spending around a century inside a pocket watch, it will now most likely continue its journey on someone's wrist. Thank you very much to everyone who stayed with me all the way to the end of this video. I truly appreciate it.